I hadn't spoken to my parents in 16 years when the voicemail came through. It was short, 13 seconds, and every word sliced through me like glass. "Rebecca, it's Mom. We need your help. It's about your father. Please call us back. It's urgent." For a few seconds, I thought my phone was playing a cruel joke. The same woman who once told me I was dead to her was now begging me to call her. I sat frozen on the leather couch of my Manhattan apartment, staring at the city skyline glittering outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was a Thursday night. My daughter was asleep in her room down the hall. Investors were waiting on a decision that could make or break my company. And yet, all I could hear was that trembling voice I hadn't heard since I was 16. A laugh escaped me, bitter, disbelieving, hollow. Mom needed my help? Where was her help when I was standing on the porch with a duffel bag, 6 months pregnant, and nowhere to go? The past has a way of knocking when you finally think you've locked every door. If you had met me back then, you'd never guess I'd become the kind of woman people write magazine articles about. Back then, I was just Rebecca Turner, the pastor's daughter from Maplewood, Ohio. The quiet girl who sang in the church choir, wore her skirts below the knee, and smiled politely at the neighbors even when they whispered about how strict my father was. Our house was the kind that smelled like lemon polish and control. Dad's Bible sat in the center of the dining table like a silent referee. Mom moved through the house like a ghost with a checklist: laundry, dinner, appearances. Love was conditional in our home. You earned it by obeying, and I was good at earning, until Jake Miller lived 2 streets away, the boy with oil-stained hands and blue eyes that made trouble look like freedom. He worked after school at his father's repair shop. I'd stop by under the excuse of needing a tire check, though I knew nothing about cars. He'd wipe his hands on a rag and smile that crooked smile. "You sure you need air or just attention, Becky?" I'd blush, roll my eyes, and tell him he was full of himself. But inside, I liked that he saw me. Not the pastor's daughter, not the straight-A student, not the good girl with perfect posture. Just me. The first time he kissed me, it was behind the high school gym after choir rehearsal. The floodlights flickered. The world felt huge and secret. When his lips touched mine, I felt like I'd been waiting my whole life for something that made no sense, but felt absolutely right. We were careful, or thought we were. But life doesn't care about careful. The first sign was the morning sickness. I remember gripping the sink, the smell of mint toothpaste making me gag. I stared at the mirror and whispered, "No, please, no." I was 16, a junior, a scholarship student at St. Mary's, and my father's pride. I could already see his face if he found out. Tight, red, veins popping near his temples like they did during Sunday sermons about sin. Jake tried to be brave when I told him. He held my hand, said, "We'll figure it out." But I saw the panic in his eyes, the kind of fear that makes boys run, and run he did. 2 weeks later, he stopped answering my calls. Then his family moved to Michigan for better work. Just like that, I was alone with a secret that could destroy everything. I hid it for as long as I could. Baggy sweaters, layers of excuses, but you can't hide a heartbeat forever. It was my mother who found out first. She was folding laundry when she noticed the prenatal vitamins in my backpack. That night at dinner, she placed them on the table beside Dad's Bible without saying a word. Dad's fork froze mid-air. "What is this?" he asked. My throat went dry. "Vitamins. For who?" When I didn't answer, he slammed his hand on the table. The sound echoed through the house like thunder. "For who, Rebecca?" I started shaking. "For me," Mom gasped. Dad's face turned the color of rage. "Are you telling me you're pregnant?" I nodded, barely breathing. The silence that followed was worse than the shouting that came after. I thought they'd ground me, send me away to some distant aunt's house, make me pray until I hated myself. But what they did was colder. Dad stood up, walked to the closet, pulled out a suitcase. "You've shamed this family," he said. "You will not live under this roof." Mom didn't look at me. She just stood by the table, gripping her wedding ring so tightly I thought it might cut her finger. "Please," I begged. "I have nowhere to go." Dad pointed to the door. "Then you should have thought about that before opening your legs." Those words still echo sometimes in my dreams. He handed me $50. $50 to start a life. $50 for my sins. It was November. The air was freezing. I stood on the porch with my duffel bag, the wind stinging my face, my tears freezing on my cheeks. Mom opened the door once, just enough to whisper, "You made your bed, Rebecca. Don't come back until you've learned what life really is." Then she closed it again, and just like that, I was gone. I spent that night on a park bench outside the church. I watched my breath turn into clouds under the yellow streetlight, my hands pressed against the curve of my stomach. Inside me, a heartbeat thumped, steady, defiant. It wasn't just my baby's heartbeat. It was mine too. That night I made myself a promise. If my parents didn't want me, I'd become someone they'd regret losing. I didn't know how. I didn't know when, but I knew one thing. I wasn't done. And now, 16 years later, they wanted me back. Not because they missed me, not because they wanted to meet the granddaughter they'd never held, but because they needed something. I replayed Mom's message one more time. Her voice cracked halfway through. "It's about your father, please. It's urgent." I deleted it. Then I undeleted it. Then I sat there in silence until my daughter Lily walked in wearing her pink pajamas, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Mom? Who were you talking to?" she asked. "No one, sweetheart. Go back to bed." She tilted her head, studying me. "You're crying." I wiped my face quickly. "Just tired, baby." "Mommy's okay." She nodded, hugged me, and padded back to her room. When the door closed, I looked out the window again. The city glittered below, proof that I had survived. Built something, become someone, but inside, that 16-year-old girl was still standing in the snow with $50 and a broken heart, and she wanted answers. So, I picked up my phone, scrolled to unknown number, and pressed call back. The line rang once, twice. Then a weak, familiar voice whispered, "Rebecca?" I froze. "Dad?" There was a long pause before he said it. "We need you. Please, we're going to lose everything." The first thing I noticed was how small his voice sounded. This was the man who once preached about righteousness so loud it shook the stained glass windows of our church. But now, his voice was paper thin. "Rebecca?" He whispered again, as if saying my name might make me disappear. I didn't say anything. I just held the phone to my ear and listened to the sound of his breathing. For a moment, it was like being 16 again, standing in that living room, facing the man who threw me out. But I wasn't that girl anymore. "I didn't think you'd call," he finally said. "You're right," I replied flatly. "I almost didn't." He let out a weak laugh, the kind that hides desperation. "Your mother and we need to see you. It's important." I closed my eyes. 16 years. Not a single birthday card. Not a single phone call to ask about the child I carried alone. Not one word. And now suddenly it was important. "What happened?" I asked. He hesitated. I could picture him sitting in that old kitchen with the ticking clock on the wall, gripping the receiver like a lifeline. "It's complicated. But your mother is sick and we're in trouble." Trouble. That word landed differently when it came from him. For years I was the trouble. I was the sin, the shame, the mistake. I swallowed. "You didn't call me when I was bleeding in a hospital bed after giving birth. You didn't call me when I was sleeping on floors and working 2 jobs. Why now?" His breath hitched. Because you're our daughter." I almost laughed. "I stopped being your daughter the night you locked the door behind me." The line went silent. Then a single word, "Please." Not angry, not demanding, just broken. Something inside me shifted. Not forgiveness, not even close, but curiosity. After everything they'd done, what could possibly make my father beg? "Fine," I said finally. "I'll meet you." I heard his breath catch, like he'd been underwater for years. "Tomorrow?" he asked, voice trembling. "Tomorrow," I repeated, and hung up. If you'd told me back then that I'd ever get a call like that, I would have laughed in your face. The night my parents threw me out, I walked 6 miles to the town shelter. The snow was falling in soft, heavy sheets. My shoes soaked through. My hands were shaking from the cold and from everything that had just shattered inside me. I remember the red brick building, the wooden cross nailed crookedly above the entrance, the flickering fluorescent light over the door. That was where I met Martha. She was a woman in her late 50s with kind eyes, a silver braid down her back, and a voice that sounded like warm soup on a cold night. She wrapped me in a blanket, sat me down, and gave me the first hot meal I'd had since breakfast. "You're safe now," she said gently. "No matter what happened out there, you're safe in here." I burst into tears so hard my entire body shook. She didn't ask me for explanations or judgments. She just held my hand until the storm inside me settled a little. Martha became the mother my own mother refused to be. Over the next few months, I stayed at the shelter for teen mothers. I went to school in the morning, worked part-time at a diner in the evening, and prayed I could hold everything together long enough to keep my baby. Every Sunday, I'd walk past my parents' house. The curtains were always closed. They never opened the door, not once. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror, staring at the woman I'd become. Black blazer, silk blouse, gold necklace, hair perfectly styled, no trace of the terrified girl they abandoned. Lily was already at school. She didn't know the truth, not all of it. She knew her grandparents existed. She also knew they'd never been in her life. As I applied lipstick, a thought burned at the back of my mind. Why now? Why after 16 years of silence? I grabbed my keys and walked out. We agreed to meet at a small coffee shop on 5th Avenue. It was neutral ground, public, quiet, and far away from Maplewood. I spotted them the moment I walked in. My father sat stiffly at a corner table, wearing the same black wool coat I remembered from my childhood. His hair, once thick and dark, was now gray at the edges. His shoulders, once broad and intimidating, seemed smaller somehow. My mother sat beside him, clutching her handbag like it was the only thing holding her up. She looked old. Not just older, old. When they saw me, both froze. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father stood halfway, unsure if he should hug me or stay seated. I didn't make it easy for them. I walked over slowly, heels clicking against the wooden floor. "Rebecca," Dad said softly. "Pastor Turner," I replied. The look that flashed across his face, shame, hurt, regret, almost satisfied something in me. Almost. I sat down without hugging them. A waitress came, and my mother ordered chamomile tea like she always did. My father ordered black coffee. I didn't order anything. For a minute, no one spoke. Then my father cleared his throat. "You look successful," I tilted my head. "Is that why you called?" He flinched. It was my mother who broke first. Her voice cracked like old wood. "Rebecca, your father's business is failing. We've lost almost everything. Business. The same church my father ran with iron fists and self-righteous sermons. The same community that turned its back on me because he told them I was a sinner. What do you want from me?" I asked. Dad lowered his gaze. "We need help. Financial help," I laughed softly. "Financial help. From the daughter you abandoned with $50 and a suitcase." Tears filled my mother's eyes. "We made mistakes." "Mistakes." I leaned forward, my voice low but sharp. "Throwing your pregnant 16-year-old out into the cold isn't a mistake. It's cruelty." Dad's jaw tightened. "We did what we thought was right at the time." I shook my head. "No, you did what made you look good to your church." Silence. People at nearby tables glanced our way, sensing the storm at our table. The weakness I'd never seen, my father's hands trembled on the coffee cup. I don't think I'd ever seen them tremble before. He looked like a man who had built his life on a mountain of rules and watched it crumble beneath him. "Rebecca," he said finally, "we're going to lose the house, the church, everything." "And what?" I asked. "You thought I'd just write a check?" My mother reached for my hand, but I pulled it back before she could touch me. "Please," she whispered. "We're not asking for much. Just enough to help us get through this." "We have nowhere else to turn," I wanted to scream. I wanted to remind her of the night she whispered, "You made your bed, Rebecca." But instead I said, "You turned your backs on me when I needed you. Why should I do any different now?" Her face crumpled like paper. Flashback. The last letter. The year after I left, I wrote them a letter. I told them about Lily. I told them how much I wished they'd been there to hold her. I got no reply. That letter is still somewhere in a shoebox under my bed, a reminder that I tried. Back to the coffee shop. My father's eyes glistened, not with anger, but something I'd never expected to see in him. Regret. I know I don't deserve your help, he said quietly. But your mother is sick. She needs treatment. We can't afford it. That hit me harder than I wanted it to. My mother's hands shook. She reached into her bag and pulled out a stack of medical papers. I didn't take them, but I saw enough. The hospital logo, the word oncology.cancer. I felt something twist inside me. Not forgiveness, not pity, just the complicated ache of a daughter who once begged these people to love her. For a moment, I saw not the parents who threw me out, but two old, fragile people staring down the barrel of their own mistakes. The offer dad leaned forward. We need $10 million. That's how much it will take to save everything. The church, the house, her treatment. I almost laughed. $10 million. When they abandoned me, they thought I'd end up broken and small. They never imagined I'd build something worth begging for. 10 million, I repeated slowly. Do you even hear yourselves? My father swallowed. We know you have it, and that stung. They didn't call because they missed me. They called because I was their last option. I stood up. Rebecca, my mother whispered. Please, I stared at them. The people who once saw me as a stain, now looking at me like salvation. I'll think about it, I said. My voice cold, and then I walked away, leaving them sitting at that table, drowning in the silence they created 16 years ago. The taxi ride as the cab pulled away from the coffee shop. I stared at the city flashing past the window. My heart pounded in my chest, not from pain, but from power. For the first time in my life, they needed me. But what they didn't know was that forgiveness has a price, and I wasn't sure they could afford it. The moment I stepped out of that coffee shop, the cold air hit me like a slap. It was early March, gray skies, wind slicing through the streets, and somewhere far away, a church bell was ringing noon. I stood on the curb, clutching my bag so tight my fingers ached. For 16 years, I had dreamed of seeing my parents again. But not like this. Not with them sitting across from me, hollow and desperate, begging me for money. I thought it would feel satisfying. It didn't. The truth is, revenge doesn't always taste sweet. Sometimes it tastes like old grief reheated and served cold. As the taxi pulled away, I caught one last glimpse of them through the window. My mother's shoulders trembling. My father staring down at his untouched coffee. For a second, I almost told the driver to turn back. Almost. The echo of the past that night. I couldn't sleep. The city was silent, but my mind wasn't. Every sound pulled me back to Maplewood. The creak of a door, the whisper of wind, the hum of the refrigerator. Memories I'd buried under success and self-control began clawing their way up again. The night they threw me out. The sound of the suitcase hitting the porch. The way Mom didn't even flinch when I cried. Please don't do this. I rolled over and stared at the ceiling. 16 years, and I still couldn't forgive them. Maybe forgiveness was never the point. Maybe survival was. In the next room, Lily was asleep, the soft glow of her nightlight spilling onto the hallway. I walked in quietly, stood by her bed, and brushed a strand of hair off her forehead. She was 16 now, the same age I was when everything fell apart. And that terrified me, because when I looked at her, I didn't just see my daughter. I saw the girl I used to be, scared, uncertain, fragile, and I swore I'd never let the world do to her what mine did to me. The offer I didn't make. The next morning, I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat by the window. My assistant, Claire, had left a stack of documents on the table. Investor reports, contracts, upcoming deals, $10 million. To them, it was salvation. To me, it was pocket change, but also something much heavier, my past asking for a price tag. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't need to check who it was. I let it ring. Then again. And again. By the third call, I picked up. Rebecca, please. My mother's voice came through, brittle and desperate. We don't have time. The hospital needs an answer by Friday. I stayed silent. She went on. I know you hate us. I know what we did was unforgivable. But your father, he's not the same man. He's trying. I almost laughed. He's trying now that the walls are crumbling. Mom, I said quietly, You never even met Lily." The line went quiet. "I know," she whispered. "I think about her every day. Do you?" I asked, my voice shaking despite myself, "because the last time you saw me, I was pregnant and freezing on your doorstep." She didn't answer. For a long time, all I heard was the sound of her crying softly. "Please," she said again. "Just come home. Talk to your father. He's not well either." I took a deep breath. "I'll think about it." And before she could say another word, I hung up. Flashback, the birth thinking about home always brought me back to the night Lily was born. It was February 17th, 2009. A snowstorm had shut down half the city. I was in a small hospital outside Cleveland, alone, terrified, and holding onto the rails of a hospital bed. Martha was there. Thank God, she held my hand through every contraction, whispering prayers under her breath. "You're stronger than you think, honey," she said. "You're bringing light into the world even if the world wasn't ready for it," I screamed until my voice broke. And then a cry, tiny, perfect, fierce. When they placed Lily in my arms, she opened her eyes and looked straight at me, like she'd been waiting her whole life to find me. I remember whispering, "It's just us, baby girl." Just us. And somehow, that was enough. Martha stayed with me those first few weeks, teaching me everything. How to swaddle, how to breathe through the exhaustion, how to keep going when every bone in my body wanted to collapse. She never judged me, never asked about Jake or my parents. She just cared. That kind of love changes you. It teaches you that blood doesn't always mean family. Back to present, the decision. By Thursday, I had convinced myself not to go. I told myself I'd done enough, that some wounds didn't deserve reopening. But that night, Lily found the old photo box. I walked into the living room and saw her sitting cross-legged on the rug, flipping through pictures of a teenage girl she barely recognized. "Is this you?" she asked, holding up a picture of me at 16, bright-eyed, smiling, standing in front of our old house in Ohio. "Yeah," I said quietly. "That was before you," she smiled. "You looked happy?" "I thought I was," I murmured. Then she frowned. "Who's this?" It was my parents, her grandparents, in their Sunday clothes, arms stiffly around each other, pretending for the camera that everything was perfect. "They're family," I said finally. Her eyes widened. "Wait, you mean I have grandparents?" I froze. In 16 years, I had never once said the words out loud. She blinked. "Are they dead?" "No," I whispered. "They're just gone." She studied me with that same piercing gaze she'd had since she was a baby. "Maybe you should talk to them, Mom, before it's too late." I almost laughed at the irony. She didn't know the whole story. She didn't know that they had chosen their pride over me, but the way she said it, soft, innocent, hopeful, broke something inside me. That night, I packed a small bag, just in case. The return Friday morning, I boarded a flight to Ohio. It was the first time I'd been back since that night. As the plane descended, the sight of the small town made my chest tighten. The old church steeple still cut through the skyline like a finger pointing to heaven. The streets looked smaller, the houses closer. When I stepped out of the airport, the cold smelled the same, a mix of pine and memory. A car was waiting. My father had sent one of the church volunteers to pick me up. The driver was polite, quiet, didn't ask questions. As we drove through Maplewood, everything looked frozen in time. The diner where I used to work, the park bench where I cried the night I left, the streetlight that flickered above me like it was watching, and then the house. White paint peeling. Curtains drawn, the front steps sagging under the weight of years. I stepped out slowly, my boots crunching on the snow. For a long moment, I just stared at the door. The same door that once slammed in my face. Then it opened. The face of the past. My mother stood there, small and fragile, a scarf wrapped around her head. Her eyes widened when she saw me, 100 emotions flickering across her face in a second. "Rebecca," she whispered, her voice trembling. I swallowed hard. "Hi, Mom!" She covered her mouth and started crying. Before I could react, She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. I froze. For 16 years I had dreamed of this moment. And now that it was here, I felt nothing. Her body shook against mine. "I'm so sorry," she whispered over and over. "I'm so sorry for everything. I didn't know whether to believe her." Then a voice came from inside the house. Deep, weak, but unmistakably his. "Rebecca, is that you?" My heart stopped. Dad stood in the hallway, leaning heavily on a cane. His skin was pale, his frame thinner than I remembered. The powerful man who once commanded a church now looked like he could barely stand. "Come in," he said softly. "Please." I stepped across the threshold, the same line I had been pushed past 16 years ago, and for the first time in almost 2 decades, I was home. When I think back to that night, I can still hear the sound of the fork clattering against my plate. It was a small metallic sound, but in that silence, it felt like a thunderclap. My mother's eyes were locked on me, narrowed and trembling. My father sat at the head of the table, his face frozen in disbelief. The roasted chicken was still steaming on the table, but nobody was eating anymore. And I knew, without them saying a word, that they knew. 16 years old, my father muttered finally, his voice low and shaking with fury. 16, and you dare sit there at this table under my roof carrying shame in your belly? I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mouth felt dry, my hands cold. My mother slammed her hand down, making the plates jump. "Answer him, Abigail," she screamed. "Who is it? Who is the boy? Is it that mechanic's son, Jake?" Her words sliced through me like broken glass. My secret, the one I'd been hiding for weeks, was now splattered across the dinner table like blood. I opened my mouth, but the words came out cracked and small. "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry." My father stood so suddenly that his chair scraped across the floor. "Sorry?" His voice thundered through the dining room. "You've ruined your life, you've ruined this family, and you think sorry fixes that?" Tears welled up in my eyes. I looked at my mother, hoping she'd step in, hoping she'd show even a flicker of mercy. But she just folded her arms and stared at me like I was a stranger. "You've embarrassed us," she hissed. "The church, our friends, what will they think when they find out? A pregnant 16-year-old? Under our roof? No, not here. Not you." My stomach twisted. I reached for her hand, desperate. "Please, Mom, I didn't mean for this to happen. I'm scared. I need you." She pulled her hand away like I was contaminated. My father's breathing grew heavier, like he was trying to control something deep inside him. "Get up," he said. His voice was quiet, deadly. "Go pack your things." I froze. "What?" "You heard me. Dad, please." He slammed his fist on the table, hard enough to rattle the dishes. "Get out of my sight, Abigail. You're not my daughter anymore. You brought sin into this house." I remember shaking, my legs barely holding me up as I stumbled toward my room. My mother followed, still shouting things I can't forget even now. "You threw away your future. You threw away everything we gave you. You disgust me." I threw some clothes into my backpack with trembling hands. Every few seconds I had to stop to wipe my tears. I couldn't see straight. My mother stood at the doorway watching me like a guard. "You want to play adult? Go live like one." I turned to her, choking on sobs. "Where will I go?" She shrugged. "You should have thought of that before you spread your legs." That sentence broke me. I don't think I've ever hated silence as much as I did after she said that, because silence meant she was done caring. When I walked down the stairs with my bag, my father was waiting by the front door. His Bible was sitting on the hallway table beside him. He looked at me like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. He just opened the door. The night air hit me like ice. I stood there staring out into the darkness of our small Ohio town. The porch light buzzed overhead, and the street was empty. I turned back, hoping, praying that one of them would stop me, that my mom would run after me, or my dad would say, "Wait, come back inside." But all I saw was their shadows in the doorway, and then the door closed. I remember standing there for a long time. My breath turned white in the cold. I clutched my belly and whispered to the tiny heartbeat inside me, "It's okay. I've got you. I promise I won't leave you." I started walking. I didn't even know where I was going, just away. The first place I went was Jake's house. His father's garage light was on, so I thought maybe Just maybe, Jake was there. But when his father opened the door, he just looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. "Abigail? What are you doing here?" I wiped my tears. "Is Jake home?" He sighed, long and tired. "He left town 2 days ago. Went to stay with his uncle in Michigan. Didn't he tell you?" My throat went dry. "No, he didn't." He frowned, then noticed my bag, my face, my shaking hands. "Are you all right? You look—" He didn't finish the sentence. He knew I couldn't stay there. I couldn't explain. So I just nodded and said, "I'm fine," and walked away. The night was darker than I'd ever seen it. I ended up at the bus stop near the corner store where I used to buy candy as a kid. I sat on the bench and hugged my knees. The lights from passing cars painted streaks across my wet cheeks. For the first time in my life, I truly felt alone. Not the kind of loneliness you feel when your friends don't text back, but the kind that seeps into your bones, whispering that nobody in the world cares if you live or die. At around 11 p.m., a woman came out of the store carrying coffee. She looked about 50 with kind eyes and a knitted scarf. She stopped when she saw me. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" she asked. I tried to nod, but instead I broke down, ugly, uncontrollable sobbing. She sat next to me and rubbed my back. "It's okay, honey. Whatever it is, you'll get through it." I didn't know her name. I didn't know why she stopped. But that night, she was the only person who showed me a bit of kindness. When she asked where I was staying, I told her the truth. Nowhere. She hesitated, then pulled a card from her purse. "There's a shelter a few blocks down, St. Mary's. They take in girls your age. Go there tonight, okay? They'll help you." I took the card, my hands still trembling. "Thank you," she smiled softly. "Don't thank me yet, sweetheart. Just promise me one thing." I looked at her. "Promise me you won't give up on yourself." I don't remember the walk to the shelter, only the way my feet hurt and how heavy my backpack felt. The building was old, with a cross above the door and dim yellow light spilling from the windows. A woman inside greeted me, gray hair, warm eyes, and a tired smile. "You're safe now," she said. "Come in, sweetheart." Her name was Martha, and that night, when I lay on a thin cot surrounded by other girls who looked just as lost as me, I pressed my hand to my belly and whispered again, "It's okay. I've got you. No matter what happens, I won't let anyone throw us away again." Outside, the wind howled against the windows, but for the first time in weeks, I felt the faintest bit of peace, because even though my parents had slammed the door on me, someone else had opened one. I woke up to the sound of soft humming. For a second, I thought it was my mother. The voice was gentle, low, almost like a lullaby I used to hear through the walls when she thought I was asleep. But when I opened my eyes, I wasn't home. The room smelled like old wood and detergent. Thin sunlight filtered through lace curtains, painting soft shapes on the floor. A woman stood by the window, folding clean sheets. Her gray hair was tied back in a bun, and her glasses sat halfway down her nose. "You're awake," she said, smiling warmly. "You came in late last night, didn't you?" I nodded slowly, my mind still foggy from exhaustion. "Yeah, someone told me about this place," she nodded. "That must have been Linda. She brings us girls all the time when she finds them wandering around town." Her voice was calm, motherly, the kind that made you want to cry even if you didn't mean to. "I'm Martha," she said, walking over and pulling a chair beside my bed. "And you are?" "Abigail," I whispered. She reached out and gently patted my hand. "Pretty name. Well, Abigail, you're safe here. We don't ask too many questions on the first morning. Breakfast is downstairs if you're hungry." "Thank you," I murmured, but my voice cracked. Her eyes softened. "You've had a hard night, haven't you?" I nodded. "Well, sweetheart," she said quietly, "hard nights don't last forever. That's something I've learned in 58 years of living." And then she left me to rest. Breakfast was simple: scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, but it tasted like heaven. Around me there were about 10 other girls, all roughly my age or a little older. Some had babies, some had swollen bellies like mine, some wore bruises like invisible badges of survival, but they were laughing. One girl, about 17 with wild curly hair, caught me staring. "First day?" I nodded. "Don't worry," she said, smiling. "You'll get used to it. They call this place St. Mary's Shelter for Young Mothers, but honestly, It's more like rehab for broken hearts. Her words made me smile for the first time in days. After breakfast, Martha gathered everyone in a small room with a big wooden cross on the wall. "Ladies," she began, "today we start fresh. Whatever brought you here, it doesn't define you. You are not your mistakes. You are not your pain. You are the love you give and the love you choose." Her voice carried warmth that melted through the walls. For the first time, I didn't feel like trash. I didn't feel ruined. I just felt human again. Over the next few weeks, Martha became like the mother I wished I'd had. She helped me sign up for prenatal care, gave me clean clothes, and taught me how to cook cheap but healthy meals. At night, she'd sit with me while I read books to my unborn baby. "Talk to her," she'd whisper. "She can hear you, you know." "I don't know if it's a girl," I'd say. She'd wink. "Oh, trust me. It's a girl. I can tell by the way you worry." Sometimes she'd share her own stories. About her daughter who'd passed away years ago from cancer. About how that loss made her turn this shelter into her life's mission. "God didn't take her from me," she'd say softly. "He gave me more daughters than I ever dreamed I'd have. And now he's given me you." I didn't know how to reply to that, so I just cried and hugged her. Around my 7th month, the pain started, sharp, twisting, unbearable. I thought it was early contractions, but Martha stayed calm. "Breathe, sweetheart. You're okay. The baby's just reminding you she's there." She helped me breathe through it, rubbing my back and whispering softly, "You're stronger than you think." That night, I sat awake staring at the ceiling, feeling the tiny kicks inside me. I thought of my parents. I wondered if they were sitting at that same dinner table, pretending I never existed. I thought of Jake, wherever he was. Did he ever think of me? Did he even know I was still carrying his child? The tears came before I could stop them. I pressed a pillow against my mouth to muffle the sound, and then I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Martha. She didn't say anything. She just sat on the edge of my bed, took my hand, and held it until my breathing slowed. Sometimes silence is the only kind of love that works. A month later, the labor came. It was a Sunday morning. Rain poured outside, thunder echoing through the old church walls. I remember clutching Martha's arm and screaming as another contraction hit. "You're almost there, honey," she said, wiping my forehead with a damp cloth. Just one more push. I wanted to give up. The pain felt endless, but then I heard it. An impossibly small cry cutting through the storm, and suddenly it was over. They placed her in my arms, tiny, warm, perfect. Her skin was soft as rose petals, her eyes half open like she was already judging the world she'd been born into. I looked down at her and whispered, "Lily?" Martha smiled through her tears. "Lily," she repeated. "It suits her." I cried harder than I ever had. Every tear that fell carried the pain of what I'd lost and the beauty of what I'd gained. Lily wrapped her tiny fingers around mine, and I swear in that moment I felt God's forgiveness in her touch. The weeks after her birth were a blur of exhaustion and wonder. I learned how to bathe her, feed her, rock her to sleep. The shelter became my world. Every morning, Martha would come by and whisper, "How's my favorite little miracle?" She'd hold Lily and hum softly while I rested. And every night, when the world went quiet, I'd whisper to my daughter, "We're going to be okay, Lily. I promise you. No matter what it takes." Sometimes I'd catch Martha watching us from the doorway, smiling sadly. One night, I asked her, "Do you ever get tired of taking care of people like me?" She shook her head. "No, sweetheart. Because every time one of you girls stands back up, I feel like my daughter's watching and smiling." I didn't know what I believed in anymore. God, fate, forgiveness. But I believed in Martha. And I believed in Lily. And for now, that was enough. But peace doesn't last forever. As months passed, the shelter's funding began to dry up. Martha received letters, official, cold letters, from the state, from donors pulling out. One evening, she sat me down in her office. Her smile was weak. "They're closing us down, Abby. I'm sorry." My heart sank. "What will happen to everyone?" "They'll relocate most of the girls." "But you," she paused, tears filling her eyes. "You're strong. You've grown. You'll find your way. I know it. That night, as I watched the sunset over the cracked church windows, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Lily grow up the way I did, afraid, abandoned, dependent on others. I was going to make something of myself, no matter how long it took. The day I left St. Mary's, Martha hugged me tighter than anyone ever had. Promise me one thing. Abigail, she said softly. I looked at her, tears in my eyes. Anything. Promise me you'll never forget where you came from. Because when people like you rise, they're the ones who can save others like you used to be. I nodded, crying. I promise. She kissed Lily's forehead. Goodbye, my little miracle. Go make the world better. And as I walked away from that shelter, with one arm holding my daughter and the other carrying a small duffel bag, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not because the world had changed, but because I finally believed I could. The first few months after leaving St. Mary's were the hardest days of my life. There were mornings when I woke up with Lily's tiny fingers tangled in my hair, her soft breathing against my neck, and I'd just stare at the ceiling wondering how we were going to make it another day. We were living in a small room above an old laundromat in downtown Columbus. The rent was cheap because the pipes groaned all night and the heat barely worked. Sometimes, when the winter winds pushed through the cracks in the window, I'd wrap Lily in 2 blankets and press her against my chest just to keep her warm. But every time she smiled, every time her big brown eyes found mine, it felt like a reminder. You have a reason to keep going. I worked wherever I could. During the day, I cleaned offices for a janitorial company. At night, after Lily fell asleep, I studied on an old laptop someone at the shelter had given me. Martha's voice still echoed in my head every time I thought about quitting. Don't forget where you came from, Abigail. But don't let it decide where you're going, so I kept going. The first job that felt like a real chance came when I started working at a diner called Rosie's Place. Rosie was a tough woman in her 50s, red lipstick always perfect, voice like gravel from too many years of cigarettes. She reminded me of what my mother could have been, if my mother had ever learned compassion. Single mom? Rosie asked when I came in for the interview. Yes, I said, nervous. She studied me for a long moment, then handed me an apron. Then you already know how to multitask. Be here at 6 tomorrow. That diner became my lifeline. I poured coffee for truck drivers, wiped tables after crying teenagers, and learned to fake a smile even when my feet throbbed. But Rosie looked out for me. When I couldn't find a sitter, she let me keep Lily in a playpen in the corner booth. Customers would coo at her while I worked, and sometimes someone left $1 under her blanket for the baby. Those little moments kept us alive. One night, after a double shift, I came home and found an eviction notice pinned to the door. I just stood there in the hallway, holding Lily, staring at the paper. We were behind by 2 weeks. I had nowhere else to go. I sat on the floor and cried. Not the quiet kind, but the desperate, shaking kind that makes your chest ache. Lily woke up and started crying too, like she could feel it. That's when I decided something had to change. I couldn't keep living paycheck to paycheck. I couldn't keep begging the world for scraps of mercy. So after I put Lily back to sleep, I opened my laptop and started searching. Free online college courses. Scholarships for single mothers. Remote jobs. It felt impossible at first. But slowly I started learning. Basic coding, data entry, website design. I'd type with one hand while rocking Lily with the other. And little by little, something clicked. By the time Lily turned 3, I'd landed a part-time job doing freelance data work for a small marketing company. The pay wasn't much, but it was enough to move us out of the laundromat apartment into a 1-bedroom unit with real heat and clean walls. The first night in that new place, I sat on the floor with Lily and ate instant noodles. She giggled, slurping hers too fast, and I couldn't stop smiling. "This is home, baby," I whispered. "Our home." I took a photo of that moment. The 2 of us on the floor, surrounded by cardboard boxes and laughter. Years later, that photo would hang in my office like a trophy. But back then, it was just proof that we were surviving. Still, survival wasn't enough. There were days I came home so tired that my hands shook when I tried to unlock the door. There were nights Lily had a fever, and I had to choose between buying her medicine or paying the light bill. Sometimes I'd stare at the mirror and whisper, "You can't do this." And then I'd hear Martha's voice in my memory, "You're stronger than you think." I didn't have anyone else to believe in me, so I had to learn to do it myself. When Lily started preschool, it felt like I was sending a piece of my heart into the world. She ran toward the door with her tiny backpack, her curls bouncing, shouting, "Bye, Mommy!" without even looking back. That night, I sat on the couch staring at her baby pictures. She was growing faster than I could keep up. I made a promise to myself. I'm going to build something real, something that will give her the life she deserves. Around that time, I began taking on small website design projects. I'd work late into the night, learning how to code better, how to make things beautiful. I didn't have formal training, just stubbornness and Google. But within a year, I had clients. Then more clients. Then referrals. People liked my work because it wasn't just clean, it felt human. I understood struggle. I designed things for small businesses like mine. People who were trying to stand on their own. Eventually, I created a small app, a community space for single mothers to find local jobs, childcare resources, and emotional support. I named it Second Chance. It wasn't fancy at first. Just a small project I built in my living room while Lily colored beside me, but it spread, first to a few hundred users, then thousands. Then news outlets started calling it a lifeline for struggling single mothers. I cried the day I saw the article, not because of pride, but because I'd finally turned my pain into something useful. The success brought new challenges. Investors reached out. Business meetings replaced diner shifts. Lily's drawings started covering my desk at home. Little stick figures labeled Mommy with a heart. But even as I rose, I carried guilt. For the mothers still sleeping on shelter floors. For the girls who didn't get a Martha. For the ones who didn't make it out. So every month, I donated a small portion of what I earned to St. Mary's Shelter. I never told Martha. I just wanted to quietly give back what she'd given me. Then, one evening, something happened that I'll never forget. Lily, now 6 years old, came home from school with a piece of paper in her hand. "Mommy," she said proudly, "I drew our family." I looked down. It was a crayon drawing of me, her, and an empty space beside us. "Who's that?" I asked gently, pointing to the blank outline. She shrugged. "That's Daddy. My teacher said families have mommies and daddies." My heart sank. I tried to smile. Sometimes baby families look different. "We're still a family," she frowned. "Did Daddy not want us?" Her words hit me like a knife. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the dark and whispered to myself, "No, Lily, he just wasn't strong enough for us." But I was. I'd been strong enough to survive the nights in the cold. Strong enough to carry her alone. Strong enough to build something from nothing. And I wasn't done yet. Because as I tucked her in and kissed her forehead, I realized something. I hadn't just been raising Lily all these years. She'd been raising me too, teaching me what real love looks like, the kind that doesn't abandon, the kind that doesn't need forgiveness to exist. That night, before I fell asleep, I checked my email. There was a message waiting for me from a major investor in New York. He'd heard about my app and wanted to meet. I closed my laptop, my heart racing. For the first time, it felt like the door to a brand new world was opening. And this time, no one was standing in the way. When I turned 22, I looked at myself in the mirror and realized I had become everything my parents said I would never be. Strong, successful, and unbroken. The girl who once cried in a cheap motel bathroom while her parents slammed the door on her face was gone. In her place stood a woman who had learned how to build an empire from ashes. After my graduation, I landed a job at a small tech startup in Chicago. It wasn't glamorous. The office smelled like burnt coffee and the computers were older than me, but it was mine. Every day I'd drop Lily off at daycare, kiss her tiny forehead, and head to work with a determination that scared people. Because deep down, I had this burning goal, to prove them wrong. Every time I remembered my mother's cold eyes, every time my father's voice echoed, "You've ruined this family," I pushed harder. I stayed late nights learning coding languages, working on projects outside office hours, and pitching ideas nobody wanted to listen to, until one day, Someone did. It started when my boss, Andrew, overheard me talking to a client. He pulled me aside and said, "You've got the kind of fire this company needs." He gave me a small project, redesigning an outdated mobile app for a local grocery chain. It wasn't much, but I poured my heart into it. When it launched, it got thousands of downloads within weeks. The company's profits doubled. Andrew called me into his office again, eyes wide. "You just saved this company from closing," he said. "How would you feel about leading our next project?" That was the first time I felt like someone saw me. Not the mistake, not the teenage mother, not the girl who got thrown out, just me. By the time I was 24, I'd become one of the lead developers in the company. My salary went from barely scraping by to 6 figures. I moved Lily and me into a 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Chicago. Nothing too fancy, but it had big windows that filled the room with sunlight. Every night, we'd sit by the window, eating dinner and watching the city lights sparkle. Lily loved pointing out cars and counting the tiny people walking below. She was growing so fast. Sometimes I'd just stare at her, her curly brown hair, her wide eyes, and feel my heart ache with love. She was my entire world. Everything I did was for her, but something inside me kept whispering, "This isn't the end. You're meant for more." So when the startup sold to a larger corporation and I received a $200,000 payout, I didn't spend it. I invested it into my own company. I called it Lily Tech, after my daughter. Starting a business at 25 as a single mother was terrifying. There were nights when I didn't sleep, when I stared at the computer screen until my vision blurred. But there were also moments that felt like magic. Moments when a client said yes, when an idea took off, when money started flowing in. Within 2 years, Lily Tech went from a small freelance company to one of Chicago's fastest-growing digital firms. I hired a team, opened a sleek glass office downtown, and started working with clients I once dreamed about. Hospitals, schools, even government projects. At 28, I became a millionaire. And yet, some nights, I'd still wake up in a cold sweat, remembering the night I was kicked out. The rain, my mother's voice, the pain. It was like a scar that never faded, a reminder of how easily love can turn cruel. It was around that time, the success, the money, the media attention, that the ghosts from my past decided to reappear. It started with an email. Subject: "It's been a long time." I froze when I saw the name, from Mom. I didn't even open it. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. After years of silence, years of pretending I didn't exist, she suddenly wanted to talk. That night, I sat by the window with my laptop open, heart pounding, reading and rereading that subject line. Finally, curiosity won. I clicked it. "Dear Emily, I know this must be a surprise. Your father and I have thought about you every single day. We miss you and Lily so much. We made mistakes, and we want to make it right. Please call me. Love, Mom," I laughed. Actually laughed. Where was this love when I was 16 and begging for a place to stay? Where was this care when I was giving birth alone? "For the first time in years," I replied, but not with anger, with coldness. "I appreciate the message, but you made your choice a long time ago. I don't need an apology now." I hit send and didn't look back. A week later, I received another email, this time from Dad. He didn't try to sound loving or apologetic. His tone was desperate. "Emily, I heard you've done well for yourself. Your mother and I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Please respond." That word, urgent, stuck in my mind. I ignored it. But then, 2 days later, a number I didn't recognize called me. I let it go to voicemail. When I listened to the message later, my blood ran cold. It was my mother's voice. She was crying. "Emily, please. We need your help. Your father's company. It's in trouble. We could lose everything. Please call me." I sat there in silence, my heart racing. For years, they had erased me. Now suddenly they needed me. I didn't know whether to feel satisfied or sick. Maybe both. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window while Lily slept. The city lights flickered outside, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something dangerous bubbling inside me. Power. They had all the control once. Now, I had it, but I also had something they didn't, a conscience. So I decided to meet them. Not out of love, not out of pity, but because I wanted to look them in the eyes and show them who I had become. Not the pregnant teenage girl they threw away, but the woman who built herself from nothing and didn't need them anymore. I didn't know it then, but that decision, agreeing to meet them, would lead to the most shocking confrontation of my life. Because when I finally sat across from my parents after 12 long years, they didn't just want forgiveness, they wanted $10 million. I'll never forget the moment I saw them again. It was a chilly October afternoon in Chicago, that kind of cold that seeps into your bones but still feels strangely alive. I sat at a corner table in a quiet, upscale cafe downtown, the kind with soft jazz playing and the faint smell of roasted coffee beans in the air. I'd picked the place carefully, public, calm, safe. When the door opened and I saw my mother and father step inside, my breath caught in my throat. They looked older, much older than I remembered. My father's once black hair had gone completely gray, his shoulders hunched slightly forward, his expensive coat hanging loosely like it no longer fit him. My mother, who used to wear diamonds and perfume that cost more than my rent, now looked tired. Her face was pale, her lipstick uneven, her eyes searching. For a second, I almost felt sorry for them, almost. When their eyes met mine, I saw something flicker there. Surprise, then pride, then something else. Something darker. My mother was the first to speak. "Emily," her voice trembled. I didn't stand up. I just nodded toward the seats across from me. Mom, Dad, they sat. There was a long silence, the kind that hums in your chest. My father finally cleared his throat. "You look, well, I am," I replied. My mother forced a smile. "And Lily? How is she?" "She's amazing," I said. "Top of her class. She loves science." Mom nodded, her eyes glassy. "That's wonderful." I wanted to believe her. But I could see the discomfort in her expression, like saying my daughter's name burned her tongue. We made small talk for a few minutes, though none of it felt real. They asked about my business, my house, my life. I answered politely like a stranger, and then it happened. The moment the air shifted. My father took a deep breath, folded his hands on the table, and said, "Emily, there's something we need to tell you." I waited. He exchanged a glance with my mother. She looked down, then back up at me, tears already forming. "Our company," she whispered, "is in trouble." There it was. I leaned back, my heartbeat steady but cold. "What kind of trouble?" My father sighed. "Financial. Very serious financial trouble. We made some bad investments over the years. Real estate, stocks. We thought they were solid, but they weren't," I finished. He nodded grimly. "We've lost almost everything. The bank is threatening to foreclose on our house. We've taken out loans, and now we can't pay them back." I just stared at him, feeling a strange mixture of disbelief and bitterness. "So you're broke," I said flatly. He hesitated. "Yes." My mother reached across the table, her fingers trembling. "Emily, we didn't come here to burden you, but we need your help." I froze. She continued. "We heard about your company, your success. You've done incredibly well for yourself, and we're so proud of you. But sweetheart, we're desperate. The bank is threatening to take everything next month unless we can pay off our debts." I said nothing. I just waited. Then she said it, the words that would echo in my head for months. "We need $10 million. I blinked. "Excuse me?" My father spoke quickly. "We wouldn't ask if we weren't in serious danger, Emily. You're our daughter. You have the means to help us. If you could just $10 million? I interrupted, my voice sharp. "That's not help." "That's a ransom," my mother flinched. "Please don't talk like that. How should I talk?" I said, my voice trembling now, rising. "Because the last time I asked you for help, you told me to leave your house and never come back. Remember that night? I was 16, pregnant, terrified, and you slammed the door in my face." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "We were wrong, Emily. We were scared." "No," I cut her off. "You were selfish." My father's jaw tightened. "We made a mistake, but that doesn't change the fact that we're family." "Family helps each other," I laughed. an ugly, bitter sound that made the people at the next table glance over. "Family?" I whispered. "You stopped being my family the day you chose your reputation over your daughter." For a moment, none of us spoke. The silence was heavy, suffocating. Finally, my mother broke it. "Please, Emily, your father's health isn't good. If we lose the house, we'll have nowhere to go. You have more money than you could ever spend." I looked at her, really looked. For the first time I saw not my mother, but a stranger. A woman who once threw her own child away, now begging that same child for salvation. And I realized something. I didn't owe them a thing. Not forgiveness. Not money. Not a second of my peace. I stood up slowly, pushing my chair back. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice calm but final. "I can't help you," my mother gasped. "Emily, please." "No," I said again. "You made your choice. Now live with it." My father's face went red with anger. "You ungrateful little—" I leaned down, meeting his furious eyes with an icy smile. "You taught me how to survive without love, Dad. Turns out, I also learned how to survive without guilt." Then I turned and walked away. Outside, the cold air hit me like a slap. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just kept walking until the cafe disappeared behind me. By the time I reached my car, I exhaled, a long, shaking breath that felt like release. 12 years ago, they threw me away. Now they were the ones standing in the storm. It should have felt like victory, but instead it just felt empty. That night, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching the city lights flicker beneath a velvet sky. Lily came out in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy, why are you sad?" I smiled softly. "I'm not sad, baby. Just thinking." She climbed into my lap, her little head resting on my shoulder. "About Grandma and Grandpa?" I froze. "How do you know about them?" She shrugged. "You talk in your sleep sometimes." I laughed quietly, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Yeah, maybe I was thinking about them." She looked up at me with those wide brown eyes. "Do you love them?" The question hit me like a punch. After a long silence, I said, "I think. I love the people I wanted them to be." Lily nodded, sleepy and innocent. "That's okay, Mommy. You don't have to love everyone." I hugged her tighter. "You're right, baby." "You don't." I thought that would be the end of it. I thought walking away was the final chapter. But a week later, I'd discovered just how far my parents were willing to go for money. Because when I turned on the news that Friday morning, my coffee cup halfway to my lips, I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. My parents were being accused of fraud, and somehow, my company's name was involved. The morning everything came crashing down started like any other. Lily was sitting at the kitchen table, spooning cereal into her mouth while humming a song she'd learned at school. The smell of coffee filled the apartment. The sunlight through the window was soft and golden, peaceful. Then my phone buzzed. At first, I ignored it. But it wouldn't stop. One notification after another, texts, emails, missed calls, from coworkers, from journalists, even from old college acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years. I frowned and unlocked my phone. The first message I saw was from Andrew, my old boss. "Emily, turn on Channel 5, now." My stomach tightened. I grabbed the remote, switched on the TV, and my entire world tilted. The newscaster's voice was calm, but the headline at the bottom of the screen screamed in bold red letters, "Fraud investigation, prominent couple linked to Lily Tech's finances." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The report showed pictures of my parents, standing outside a courthouse, cameras flashing in their faces, my father's arm around my mother, who was dabbing at fake tears with a handkerchief. Accused of fraudulent business practices involving falsified contracts and forged financial documents connected to the Chicago-based tech company, Lily Tech. The mug in my hand slipped and shattered on the floor. Lily jumped. "Mommy?" I couldn't answer. My throat had closed up. My mind was spinning. They used my company's name? The reporter continued. Sources claim the couple misrepresented themselves as financial partners of Lily Tech, using the company's name to secure investments totaling over $8 million. Authorities say the CEO of Lily Tech, Emily Harper, is not currently under investigation. Not currently. My hands trembled. My entire body went cold. They hadn't just begged for money. They'd tried to steal my identity. Within hours, my office was a war zone. Phones rang non-stop. Clients demanded answers. The PR team was scrambling to issue statements. My assistant, Rachel, rushed into my office, pale-faced. "Emily, investors are calling every 5 minutes. Some want to freeze their contracts until this is cleared up." "Freeze?" I echoed. "We haven't done anything wrong. I know, but—" She hesitated. "They're scared. The story's everywhere." I pressed my palms against my forehead, trying to think. "Get our lawyers on the line. Now." By noon, I was sitting in a glass conference room with my legal team, my PR director, and 2 board members. The atmosphere was suffocating. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Marissa, slid a folder across the table. "We pulled the court filings. Your parents registered fake investment contracts under your company's name. They forged your digital signature." My heart pounded. "They what?" "They created documents that made it look like you personally endorsed their investment fund," Marissa continued. "They raised millions from private investors, all under the illusion that Lilytech was involved." I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. "Please tell me those investors know I had nothing to do with it," Marissa sighed. "Some do. Others don't. But we're working on a full public statement to clear your name." I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. They didn't just ruin their own lives. They tried to ruin mine too. That night, the media camped outside my building. Cameras flashed when I stepped out to pick up Lily from school. Reporters shouted my name, asking if I knew my parents were criminals, if I helped them, if I'd comment on the scandal. I kept my head down and said nothing. When Lily climbed into the back seat, she looked at me with wide, confused eyes. "Mommy, why were those people taking pictures?" I forced a smile. "They're just confused about something, sweetheart. It'll be okay." But it wasn't okay. Not yet. 2 days later, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, until a familiar voice came through the line. "Emily." My father. I froze. "How did you get this number?" He sounded panicked, almost breathless. "You need to help us. They're saying things that aren't true. We didn't mean for it to go this far." I felt my blood boil. "Go this far? You forged my name on fake contracts and stole money from investors, Dad. You dragged my company into your mess." He hesitated. "We were trying to protect the family. We thought if people believed Lilytech was involved, they'd trust the investment." I laughed bitterly. "Protect the family? The same family you destroyed when you threw me out at 16? Silence. Then, quietly, "We were desperate." "You should have been desperate 12 years ago," I said coldly, "when your daughter was living in a motel, pregnant and hungry." He tried again. "Emily, please. They're going to take everything. The house, the cars." "Good," I snapped. "Maybe that'll teach you what loss really feels like." Then I hung up, and for the first time since I was a teenager, I cried. Not out of weakness, but out of pure, exhausted rage. The investigation dragged on for weeks. My company's lawyers worked tirelessly to clear our name. Slowly, the truth came out. Proof that I had no involvement, digital trails showing my parents forged my signature, bank records linking every transaction to them. Public opinion shifted. The news stopped mentioning me and started calling them the Harpers, the couple who tried to scam their own daughter. They were arrested 2 weeks later. I didn't go to the courthouse. I didn't send money for bail. I didn't even call. But one night, my doorbell rang, and when I opened it, there stood my mother. She looked thinner, broken. Her hands shook as she clutched her coat around her. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They let me out on bail. I just needed to see you." I stood in the doorway, silent. Tears streamed down her face. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't know how we became these people, Emily. We lost ourselves." "We lost you," I swallowed hard. "You didn't lose me, Mom. You threw me away," she sobbed. "I was wrong. I know that now. I'll spend the rest of my life knowing that." Her knees buckled slightly. I caught her out of instinct, the same woman who once pushed me out of her home. For a long moment, I just held her there, not because I forgave her, but because I finally realized something. I wasn't that broken girl anymore. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need their love. I had already won, by surviving, by succeeding, by raising Lily in love, not hate. I gently steadied her and said, "Mom, you need to get help. For you, not for me." She nodded weakly, whispering, "I'm sorry." Then she turned and walked away. The next morning, I took Lily to the park. The sky was clear, the air crisp. She ran ahead, laughing, her curls bouncing. As I watched her, I thought about the little girl I used to be, scared, unwanted, abandoned, and I realized that little girl had finally found peace. But my parents' story wasn't over, because a few months later, just when I thought the past had finally gone quiet, I got a letter. No return address. Inside was a single piece of paper, my father's handwriting, and what it said changed everything I thought I knew about my family. The letter arrived on a gray, windy morning in March. It looked ordinary. Plain white envelope, no return address, just my name written in shaky handwriting I instantly recognized. My father's. For a long minute, I just stared at it. I didn't want to open it. My heart felt like it was caught between dread and disbelief. He was in jail. He shouldn't have been able to contact me directly. I stood by the kitchen counter, coffee growing cold in my hand, debating whether to throw it away or open it. Lily was at school. The apartment was quiet. Finally, I slid a knife under the flap and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly in half. When I unfolded it, the first line made my stomach twist. "Emily, if you're reading this, then I've already lost everything." I sank into a chair, my eyes racing down the page. "There's something I never told you, something your mother doesn't even know. When you got pregnant at 16, I wasn't angry because of the baby. I was angry because I recognized the name of the boy who got you pregnant." My hands froze. His name was Ryan Caldwell. He was the son of the man who destroyed my business 20 years ago. The man who ruined our lives, forced me into debt, humiliated me in front of everyone I knew. When I found out you were carrying his son's child, I lost control. I saw you as a betrayal, not my daughter, but a reminder of everything I hated. That's why I threw you out. That's why I said those terrible things. I blinked, reading that part again and again, my heart pounding in my ears. Ryan. That name hit me like lightning. He'd been my first love. Sweet, quiet, the boy who used to sneak me notes in class and play guitar by the lake. He never told me much about his family, only that they were complicated. I never knew how complicated. I convinced myself I was protecting you from him, the letter continued. But the truth is, I was protecting my pride. I couldn't stand the idea that my daughter loved the son of the man who ruined me, so I destroyed you instead. You didn't deserve that. Tears blurred my vision. I read the next part slowly, my hands trembling. When I saw you again, successful, independent, everything I could never be, I realized how much I'd failed you. I asked you for money because I was desperate, yes, but also because I thought if you saved us, maybe it would erase what I did. But I see now that I don't deserve saving. I covered my mouth as tears slipped down my cheeks. Emily, I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I was never angry at you, only at myself. You were the best thing I ever had, and I destroyed it. I hope one day you'll find it in your heart to live free of my shadow. At the bottom, he'd signed it, Love, Dad. I sat there for a long time, staring at the letter. It felt like someone had taken the ground out from under me, all these years. I'd believed my parents disowned me because of shame, because of the town gossip, the scandal, the pregnancy. But the truth was darker, more twisted. My father had destroyed me out of revenge. Revenge against a man who wasn't even alive anymore. And I, a 16-year-old girl, had been collateral damage in his lifelong feud. That night, I found myself driving. I didn't even know where I was going at first. The streets blurred past, wet with rain. Then I realized I was heading toward the old neighborhood, the place I'd sworn never to return to. When I pulled up to my parents' old house, I almost didn't recognize it. The paint was peeling, the garden overgrown. The lights were off. It looked dead. I sat there in silence, gripping the steering wheel, watching the empty windows. It hit me then, how much time I'd spent trying to escape this place, this pain. But standing there, I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt sadness. Because no matter what my father had done, he'd been broken long before he broke me. The next day, I went to visit him. I told myself I wasn't going for him. I was going for closure. The prison was gray and cold, all metal and silence. The guard led me through a narrow hallway until I reached a glass booth. When my father walked in, wearing that orange uniform, I almost didn't recognize him. His face was thinner, his eyes hollow, but when he saw me, something flickered. Disbelief, then shame. He picked up the phone on his side of the glass. I did the same. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I said softly, "I got your letter." He nodded. "I didn't think you'd read it." I did. Silence stretched. Finally he whispered, "I'm sorry." I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see the monster from my nightmares. I saw a man who had built his entire life around pride and bitterness and watched it destroy him. "I believe you," I said quietly. His eyes widened, wet with tears. "You do?" I nodded. "But that doesn't mean I forgive you." He swallowed hard. "I know. But," I continued, my voice steady, "I'm done carrying this. The hate, the anger. It ends with me." He closed his eyes, a tear slipping down his cheek. "You sound like your mother. That surprised me." "What do you mean?" He gave a small, broken smile. "After you left, she cried every night. She wanted to bring you home. I was the one who said no. I told her we couldn't afford to look weak. I made her choose between me and you, and she chose wrong. I didn't know what to say. My chest ached, but there was no going back now. When the guard said our time was up, I stood. My father's voice broke as he said, "Emily, please, tell Lily I'm sorry too." I paused, then said, "She doesn't even know you, and that's the best thing I ever did for her." Then I walked away. That night, I tucked Lily into bed. She looked up at me sleepily and said, "Mommy, why do people hurt the ones they love?" I thought about that for a long moment. "Because sometimes," I said quietly, "they never learned what love really is." She nodded like she understood more than she should. "You love me, though." "With all my heart," I whispered. She smiled and drifted off to sleep. I sat beside her, watching her breathe, and I realized something important. I'd spent so many years trying to prove my parents wrong, to prove I was worth loving, but I didn't need their love anymore because I'd already built the life they said I couldn't, and I'd filled it with real love. Not the kind that comes with conditions or pride. The letter hadn't destroyed me. It had freed me. A week later, I framed that letter, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof of how far I'd come. Every time I looked at it, I didn't see my father's guilt anymore. I saw my victory, the story of a girl who lost everything, and still became everything. But life wasn't done with me yet, because just when I thought the past had finally been buried, a knock came at my door one summer evening, and standing there was the one person I never expected to see again. Ryan Caldwell, the father of my child. When I opened the door that evening, I froze. It was like the air had been sucked out of the world. There he stood, Ryan Caldwell, older, thinner, but unmistakably him. The boy who had vanished the night everything fell apart. Now he was a man, and time had carved stories into his face, tired eyes, rough hands, a small scar on his jaw that hadn't been there before. He didn't speak at first, just looked at me with something that was both regret and relief. "Hi, Emily," he said softly. I couldn't move. My hand was still gripping the doorknob, knuckles white. "Ryan?" He gave a small nod. "Yeah, it's me." The world spun a little. After all these years, after raising Lily alone, after convincing myself he'd abandoned me, there he was, on my doorstep in the flesh. I stepped back instinctively. "What are you doing here?" He hesitated. "I didn't know if I should come, but I had to see you." I crossed my arms, the years of anger and confusion bubbling up. "You had to? Ryan, you disappeared. You left me to face everything alone." He flinched at my tone. "I know, and I'm sorry." "You have no idea how sorry." "Then tell me." My voice cracked. "Tell me why you left. Tell me where the hell you've been for the last 12 years. He looked down, exhaling shakily. "Can I come in?" For a long moment I said nothing. Then I stepped aside. He walked in slowly, looking around the small apartment. His eyes paused on the framed letter from my father sitting on the shelf. "You kept it?" he murmured. I ignored the comment and sat down at the table. "Start talking, Ryan." He stayed standing, his hands trembling slightly. "The night your dad kicked you out?" "He called me." I frowned. "What?" "He told me if I ever came near you again, he'd ruin my family the same way his was ruined. He said he'd make sure my dad lost everything. Our house, our business, our name. He wasn't bluffing, Emily. Your dad had people. He still knew how to pull strings." My stomach twisted. "So you just left, without even saying goodbye?" He looked at me with wet eyes. "He told me if I didn't, you'd be the one to suffer. He said he'd make sure you and the baby didn't survive it." My heart dropped. "You think I believed him?" Ryan continued. "No. But when my mom got a threatening letter a few days later, details about where she worked, her schedule, I realized he wasn't bluffing. So I ran. I stared at him, my pulse pounding. You ran, Ryan. And I was 16, pregnant and homeless. Do you have any idea what that felt like?" He nodded, tears slipping down his face. "Every day. Every damn day." He sank into the chair across from me. "I tried to contact you. I wrote letters, sent them to your old address, your school, everywhere I could think of. They all came back. And when I finally got enough courage to come back, you were gone. Everyone said you'd left town. I thought you wanted nothing to do with me." For a moment I didn't speak. I just sat there watching the boy who'd once been my whole world, now sitting broken in front of me. "Why now?" I whispered. "Why come back after all this time?" He hesitated, then reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folded paper. He pushed it across the table toward me. I unfolded it, and my breath caught. It was a birth certificate, Lily's birth certificate. But something was wrong. Under father's name, it didn't say unknown. It said Ryan Caldwell. My blood ran cold. "How did you—" "I didn't put it there," he said quickly. "I found it. It was in my dad's old storage box after he passed. It's dated before you gave birth." I looked at him, confused. "That's impossible." "It's not," he said quietly. "Emily, I think your dad forged documents to make it look like I knew, to scare my father into silence." He blackmailed him. "That's why my family moved to another state overnight. My dad paid him to leave us alone." I felt dizzy. The room spun as every lie of my past began to unravel. "So your dad knew?" I whispered. "He knew you got me pregnant?" Ryan nodded. "And he wanted to do the right thing. He wanted to support you. But your father gave him a choice, his business or me, and he chose to save his family." The rage I'd buried for years came roaring back. My voice shook. "All this time I thought you abandoned me, that you didn't care. And it was my father again. Always him. He ruined both our lives." Ryan's eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to tell you. God, I tried. But every time I got close, something happened. My dad got sick. Then the company folded. By the time I came back to town, you had a life, Emily. You were doing amazing. And I didn't want to ruin it again." I felt tears spilling down my cheeks. "You should have ruined it." "You should have told me." He reached across the table slowly, his hand trembling. "You have every right to hate me. But please believe me. I never stopped thinking about you. Or about her? Her?" He gave a soft, almost broken smile. "Lily." I froze. "You know about her?" He nodded. "I saw a picture online. You posted it for her birthday 2 years ago. She looks just like you." Silence hung thick in the air. Finally, he whispered, "Does she know?" I shook my head. "No, I never told her anything." I didn't know what to say. Ryan swallowed hard. Can I meet her?" The question hung like a ghost in the air between us. My first instinct was no. To protect Lily the way I never was protected. To shield her from the chaos, the heartbreak, the truth. But another part of me, the one that still remembered the boy who held me under the stars and whispered promises of forever, couldn't say no. "Not yet," I said softly. "She's not ready, and neither am I." He nodded slowly, accepting it. Then he said something that changed everything. "I'm dying, Emily." The words hit me like a slap. I stared at him, my chest tightening. What did you say?" He looked down, his voice cracking. "Stage 4 lymphoma. diagnosed last year. I've been in treatment ever since. It's not working anymore. I felt the air leave my lungs, he continued. I didn't come here to make you forgive me. I just didn't want to die without seeing you, without at least trying to know my daughter. Tears spilled down his face as he whispered, I just wanted her to know she wasn't a mistake. For the first time since he'd walked through that door, I couldn't speak. I just sat there shaking, staring at the man who once vanished, now standing at the edge of death. And in that moment, every ounce of anger, every wound I thought had scarred over, came undone. Because no matter what he'd done, he was still the father of my child. That night after he left, I went to Lily's room. She was asleep, hugging her favorite stuffed bear. I sat at the edge of her bed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. How do you tell a 12-year-old that the man she's never met, the one she's asked about 1,000 times, was never gone because he stopped loving her? But because the world broke both of you before she was even born. I didn't know. All I knew was that soon I'd have to, because this time, I wasn't going to let the truth die in silence. The next morning, I picked up the phone and called Ryan. When he answered, I said, "Come by tomorrow at 5. I'll introduce you to her." He didn't say anything at first, just a small, breathless, "Thank you." And for the first time in a very, very long time, I didn't feel like a scared 16-year-old girl anymore. I felt like someone reclaiming her story, piece by piece. The next afternoon, the sky was painted in shades of gray, the kind of Chicago day that made the city feel smaller, quieter. I spent the entire morning pacing the living room, cleaning things that didn't need cleaning, adjusting throw pillows that were already perfect. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. Lily was in her room, humming softly while braiding her doll's hair. She had no idea that today, her life, our lives, were about to change forever. At 4:58 p.m., there was a knock at the door. My heart dropped. I took one last deep breath, wiped my palms on my jeans, and opened it. Ryan stood there holding a bouquet of lilies, white, pure, simple. His eyes were nervous but soft. "Hi," I stepped aside. "Come in." He looked around as he entered, taking in the cozy apartment, the soft pink walls of the living room, the family photos on the mantel, all pictures of me and Lily smiling. It was like he was walking through the years he'd missed. "She likes flowers," I said quietly, nodding toward the bouquet. "You remembered." "I remember everything," he whispered. Before I could respond, Lily's voice floated from down the hall. "Mom, who is it?" I turned. "Come here, sweetheart." She skipped into the room, her brown curls bouncing, still in her unicorn pajamas. But when she saw Ryan, she stopped. Her big hazel eyes, his eyes, studied him carefully. Ryan knelt down slowly, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hi, Lily." She tilted her head. "Hi." There was a pause. She glanced at me, then back at him. "Who are you?" My throat tightened. Ryan swallowed hard. I'm someone who's wanted to meet you for a very long time." She blinked. "Are you Mom's friend?" He smiled faintly. "You could say that." I could feel my pulse hammering in my chest. "Lily," I said softly, kneeling beside her, "there's something I need to tell you. Something important." She looked up at me with that innocence only kids have. "What is it?" I took her hands in mine. "You know how it's just been you and me all these years?" She nodded. "Well, the man's standing right here. He's your father." The words hung in the air like smoke. Lily blinked once, twice, then looked at Ryan again, as if studying his face for clues. "My dad," she whispered. Ryan's eyes filled with tears. "Yeah, sweetheart. I'm your dad." Silence. Then she did something neither of us expected. She smiled. A small, shy smile that made Ryan's tears spill over. "Do you like pizza?" she asked. Ryan laughed. That same deep laugh I remembered from when we were teenagers. "I love pizza." "Then you can stay for dinner," she said confidently. "We're having pepperoni." I couldn't help but laugh through my tears. Ryan wiped his eyes, his voice trembling. "I'd like that very much. Dinner was surreal." Lily talked the entire time about school, her science fair project, her best friend Zoe, and how she wanted to be an astronaut and a baker. Ryan listened to every word like it was music, every so often. I'd catch him looking at her with a mix of awe and heartbreak, as if trying to memorize her face before it was too late. When dinner ended, Lily ran to her room to grab the pictures she'd drawn for show and tell. Ryan followed her, kneeling beside her desk, letting her explain every single one. And for a moment, just a fleeting, fragile moment, it felt like we were a family. Like the 12 years between us had vanished, but deep down, I knew the clock was ticking. Later that night, after Lily fell asleep, Ryan and I sat on the balcony, wrapped in silence. "She's perfect," he whispered. "She's everything I ever hoped she'd be." I nodded, staring out at the city lights. "She's strong, brave, smarter than I'll ever be," he smiled. "That's you in her." Then his smile faded. "I need to tell you something." I turned. His tone was different, heavier. He looked down, twisting his hands together. "It's about Lily, about the birth certificate." My stomach knotted. "What about it?" He hesitated. "When I found it in my dad's storage, there was a note attached." "It wasn't from my dad," I frowned. "Who was it from?" He looked at me, his eyes full of dread. "Your mother." My blood ran cold. "She wrote that she fixed everything, that you didn't need to know who Lily's father really was." "Emily, I think your mother changed the records." "What are you talking about?" He pulled a folded piece of yellowed paper from his jacket pocket and handed it to me. It was the note. My mother's handwriting, elegant, precise. "For Emily's sake, it's better if no one knows. This way, she'll never find out what really happened that night." My hands shook as I read it again. What night?" Ryan's face was pale. "Emily, when you told me you were pregnant, I never doubted you." "But what if—" I stood up, cutting him off. "Don't you dare finish that sentence." He swallowed hard. "Your father hated me. Your mother, she was terrified of what people would think. What if something happened at one of those parties your parents made you go to? What if—" "Stop, Emily, listen to me. If she forged documents, if she erased names, maybe it was to cover something even worse." I felt sick. My body went cold. "You're saying Lily might not be yours?" Ryan's eyes filled with tears. "I'm saying your parents might have lied about everything, including who hurt you." The room spun. Suddenly I was 16 again. In that cold hospital bed, my parents whispering to doctors, signing papers I wasn't allowed to see. My memory was fractured. Certain nights blurred, replaced by what they told me happened. Could they have lied about that too? I sank to my knees, shaking. No, that can't be true." Ryan crouched beside me, his hand hovering near my shoulder but not touching. "I don't know what the truth is." "But you deserve to." I looked at him through tears. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because," he whispered, "I'm dying, Emily, and I don't want to leave this world with lies between us." That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat by Lily's bed, watching her chest rise and fall, the soft sound of her breathing steady in the dark. Every word of that note echoed in my mind. This way, she'll never find out what really happened that night. What night? What had they done to me? I reached for Lily's hand, my heart breaking in a way I hadn't felt since the night I was disowned. I realized that the story I'd told, myself, about being a scared teen mother, abandoned by her family, might not even be the full truth. There were darker corners still hidden, and if I was going to protect my daughter, I needed to face them, even if it meant uncovering something I wasn't ready to remember. The next morning, I called someone I swore I'd never speak to again, my parents' old lawyer. When he answered, I said, "It's Emily Matthews. I need to know the truth about what happened when I was 16. There was silence on the other end. Then he sighed. "Emily, if you open that door, you won't like what you find." I clenched the phone. "Open it anyway." I didn't expect the lawyer to actually call me back, but the next morning I got a message. "Come alone. Bring ID. Don't tell anyone." It was raining when I pulled up to his old downtown office, the same building my parents used to visit when they handled family business. The elevator creaked. The hallway smelled of paper and dust, and every step echoed like a warning. When I entered his office, Mr. Cole looked smaller than I remembered. His once black hair was thin and white, and his hands trembled as he reached for a manila folder on his desk. "Emily," he said quietly, I should have burned this 12 years ago. He slid the folder toward me. Everything your parents hid, it's all in here. My pulse roared in my ears. Inside were photocopies, hospital intake forms, psychiatric notes, and a notarized statement. With my mother's signature. The date, June 18th, 2012. The night they kicked me out. I skimmed the top page, a hospital report. Patient exhibits confusion, short-term memory loss. Administered sedation per parental consent. Sedation? I had no memory of that. Mr. Cole, I whispered. What is this? He rubbed his temples. Your parents called me that night. They said you'd been assaulted by someone at a party, but they refused to press charges. They paid the hospital to keep it quiet. They told everyone you'd been with your boyfriend. I felt the blood drain from my face. So Ryan wasn't... I don't know, he said. But I can tell you your father threatened the hospital with a lawsuit if anyone released the DNA report. My heart nearly stopped. There was a DNA test? He nodded. 2, actually. The first one disappeared. The second was sealed by court order, at your mother's request. He handed me a smaller envelope. This is a copy I kept, against their wishes. I tore it open with shaking hands. The words blurred at first. But one line burned into me. Paternal match, Robert Matthews, 98%. My father. My own father. The room spun. The air vanished. Please tell me this is a mistake. Mr. Cole's eyes filled with pity. I wish it were. I couldn't breathe. The world tilted sideways, crashing into years of lies, forced smiles, and false memories. He whispered, Your mother knew. She wanted to protect the family name, so she erased everything. She told you the baby was Ryan's. She told herself it was Mercy. I stumbled to my feet, shaking. Mercy! She let me think my father saved me when he was the monster. Mr. Cole didn't answer. He just said, You deserve to know the truth. Now you do. I walked out into the rain, numb. My entire life, every belief, every scar, had been built on a lie. That night, I sat in my car outside Ryan's apartment, gripping that envelope. When he opened the door, I just handed it to him. He read it once and turned pale. Oh my God. I told you, I whispered. They destroyed both our lives. Ryan's voice broke. Emily, this means Lily is your father's... I know! I screamed, collapsing against the wall. Don't say it! He caught me before I hit the floor. For the first time, I cried like the 16-year-old girl who'd been silenced that night, louder than I ever had before. The next morning, I knew what I had to do. The truth had nearly killed me, but silence would finish the job. I went live. I opened my laptop, hit record, and started speaking, not as a CEO, not as the woman who made $10 million, but as a daughter who'd been betrayed. My name is Emily Matthews, I said. When I was 16, my parents disowned me for being pregnant. Today, I found out why. I told everything. The hospital records, the sealed DNA, the threats, the lies. I even showed the papers on camera. My voice trembled, but I didn't stop. For 12 years, they called me a disgrace. They said I ruined the family. But the truth is, he did. When I hit upload, my hands shook so hard I could barely close the laptop. By nightfall, it had 10 million views. By morning, reporters were outside my building. Headlines exploded across every screen. CEO exposes her parents' darkest secret. Wealthy couple accused of abuse and cover-up. My parents went into hiding. My mother released a statement denying everything, calling me mentally unstable. But then, the hospital whistleblower came forward. Then Mr. Cole released his own affidavit, and within a week, my father was arrested. Ryan stayed by my side through it all, even as his health worsened. One night, hooked to an IV in his hospital room, he whispered, "You did it. You broke the curse." I held his hand. "No, we did." He smiled weakly. "Tell Lily. I'm proud of her." "Tell her yourself," I said, but he didn't make it through the week. At his funeral, Lily held my hand tight. "Mom, is Daddy in heaven?" "Yes, baby," I said softly. "He's finally free." She looked up at me. "Are we free too?" For the first time, I didn't hesitate. "Yes, sweetheart. We are." 3 months later, I got another letter, this time from a correctional facility. It was from her. Emily, I know you hate me. I hate me too. Your father convinced me it was love. By the time I realized what it was, you were already pregnant. I wanted to protect you from the truth. I thought if I buried it, you could have a life. I was wrong. Please forgive me before I die. Momai sat for a long time, staring at the paper. My therapist told me forgiveness doesn't mean permission. It means freedom. So I wrote back, Mom, you protected your name, not me. But I forgive you, not for you, for me, because I refuse to carry your shame anymore. Goodbye. I mailed it the next day. And then I went to the courthouse and filed papers to legally change my last name from Matthews to Caldwell. Lily and I would share Ryan's name, the only man who ever tried to do right by us. A year later, I opened the Lily Foundation, helping teenage mothers get education and housing without judgment. Every scholarship letter begins the same way. You are not your parents' mistakes. Sometimes I still get messages asking why I didn't give my parents the $10 million they begged for. I always answer the same. Because they already took everything that mattered. I wasn't giving them my soul, too. I used to believe survival meant pretending it didn't hurt. But healing. Healing means looking at the wound and saying, I see you. You don't own me anymore. My parents disowned me for being pregnant at 16. Years later, they begged me for $10 million. But what they really wanted was power. And what I gave them instead was the truth. This is my family now. Built from ashes, held together by truth.